1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 8 through 24. To the unmarried and the widows I say that it is good for them to remain single, as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. To the married I give this charge, not I, but the Lord. The wife should not separate from her husband. But if she does, she should remain unmarried, or else be reconciled to her husband. And the husband should not divorce his wife. To the rest I say, I, not the Lord, that if any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever, and she consents to live with him, he should not divorce her. If any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever, and he consents to live with her, she should not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband is made holy because of his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy because of her husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if the unbelieving partner separates, let it be so. In such cases, the brother or sister is not enslaved. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband? Or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him, and to which God has called him. That is my rule in all the churches. Was anyone at the time of his call already circumcised? Let him not seek to remove the marks of circumcision. Was anyone at the time of his call uncircumcised? Let him not seek circumcision. For neither circumcision counts for anything, nor uncircumcision, but keeping the commandments of God. Each one should remain in the condition in which he was called. Were you a bondservant when called? Do not be concerned about it. But if you can gain your freedom, avail yourself of the opportunity. For he who was called in the Lord as a bondservant is a freedman of the Lord. Likewise, he was free when called as a bondservant of Christ. You are bought with a price. Do not become bondservants of men. So, brothers, in whatever condition each was called, there let him remain with God. The key verse in today's passage is verse 17, where Paul exhorts the Corinthians to live according to what God has assigned to each of them. Often we think that grass is greener on the other side. But what we fail to take into account is that God has allowed the circumstances in our lives so that we may be sanctified in Him. Philippians chapter 1 verse 6 says, "And I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ." Paul's exhortation to specific circumstances shows us that it is not about seeking to change the circumstances of our lives, but to accept and be faithful in the circumstance God has called us into. Whether they are circumcised or not, servants or not, married or single, we are to be thankful in all circumstances and allow God to mold our lives. Joseph in the Bible is a prime example of how God leads his people for his good and perfect will. Joseph's life was by no means a simple one. He was sold as a slave by his brothers, put into prison by his master, and had no hope to speak of. But God had a plan. Genesis chapter 45 verse 5 through 7 says, "And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in the land these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors." Although we may not see it at the moment, God is working to fulfill His perfect plan in our lives. The only thing we are asked to do is to remain faithful in the circumstances God has allowed in our lives. As we meditate on today's passage, let us be faithful in the things that God allows in our lives and lead the life that God has assigned to us.